All right.
Thanks, everyone. I do appreciate you showing up here. I will preface what I'm about to say here in the fact that earlier last week, I bit down really hard on the side of my tongue. And so for the last 5 or 6 days, I've been slurring my words. And I'm not day drinking, I promise. I'm dead sober right now when I do this one. But if they just sound like I'm a little off, that's why. And it was really scary too, because I woke up this morning, I'd nipped the inside of my lip, apparently while I was sleeping. And when that happens, usually my upper lip swells up like a balloon. I thought, please, just not today. Do not do this today. Fortunately, it didn't, but I still sound a little bit funny with the whole side mouth talking. So that's what's going on there. Anyway, thank you very much. I am Tom Duff. I'm a software engineer working for a health insurance firm in the Pacific Northwest. Live out here, work out there remotely. And I'm not an MVP. I'm not a person who, come on, go ahead and, there we go. I did not realize there was a transition there. I'm not an MVP. I'm not selling anything. I'm not a vendor. I'm just somebody like you working for a regular organization. And I do these tips. They started out internally as Spark 1 tips. In fact, we could just do these things, show you something in just a minute. You could go out and try it, and we move on from there. I had requests, people going, hey, can you share those externally? Which led to the creation of the website 1minuteofficemagic.com. So if you follow that site out there, you will see most all of these tips, because that's usually what I do. I post internal, then I post external. And when somebody like Don calls me up and says, Tom, we need a speaker, I package 20 of these up together, and that's what you're about to get here. I will also preface by saying that even though we're covering 20 tips, I do not expect every last one of them to resonate with you. That would be nice if they did, but that would be completely unrealistic. My goal is if you walk away with 3 to 4 of these tips going, oh, wow, I didn't know that. That makes a huge difference in what I do. Then I've done my job, and hopefully everybody will be happy at that point. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. First one I want to cover is turning the Microsoft Teams post notifications off. So this is one of those things, especially if you've been in a long group post and things are going back and forth. You're like, I checked out 47 posts ago, but unfortunately you still keep getting those pings, oh, so-and-so responded. So I don't want to see those. I am done with this. Well, now what you can do is you can go into the actual thread, you can click the ellipsis, and then go to turn off notifications. This is awesome because then you're not going to get those notifications on every individual post that comes out, which will save your sanity really quickly. But let's say somebody starts talking about stuff, it's like, oh, I do need to get back out there. Once you've turned it off, you can always go back out to the ellipsis, click on turn on notifications, and then you'll start getting those toaster pop-ups again. And you'll be able to follow the things on a particular post. This is not a blanket for everything that you do. You can go into team settings and do those kind of things. This is just for an individual post that you really do not want to be part of anymore. This is a really nice way to get that out of your line of sight, and you don't keep seeing things you're just not interested in anymore. Another little thing that I think is cool that isn't something that I've seen talked about a lot, but it's kind of nice if you're in a large group chat, and that is you can share a person's contact information in a Teams chat without actually having to invite them to the chat itself. So what you can do is if you go into a group chat that you're working with and you do the @ symbol like I was going to @mention somebody, one of the options you'll have at the very bottom is share someone's contact info. And if you select share someone's contact info, then you can go ahead, put that person's name in there, keeping in mind that the person's name that you put in there, they're not going to be @mentioned, they're not going to be joining the chat, they're not going to be notified. This is just to give the people in the chat an easy way to get out to their contact information to find out more information about the person. So you get Sandra's name in there, you click OK, and when you do that and click send, this is what ends up popping up. You have the little people card icon there with the person's name, And then once it shows up out in the chat and somebody hovers over that, you get all their information, the chat, the organization, video, you can call them, all those good things that you normally get. And you didn't have to go out and try to look it up yourself. You just made it really easy for everybody else in your chat to be able to find out about this person. So imagine you're doing troubleshooting on something, you say, hey, Bob, I think is a great person. Well, who's Bob? Boom, put their contact information. Everybody in the chat can now go find out Bob's contact information, and then they can decide whether or not they want to pull Bob into the chat. So you do have that option now. Creating wiki-style links in OneNote. This is kind of a cool thing. For those of you who don't know what a wiki is, I'm guessing many of you do. It's like a really quick, bare bones type site, quote unquote, where you can store documentation that references other pages in the wiki. Wiki is a short Hawaiian term for quick. So when you get a wiki, it's a quick type database where you can store documentation. In SharePoint 2010, probably in SharePoint 2013 too, there were wiki pages that you could create. That whole concept has kind of gone away with SharePoint Online, but you can create a pseudo wiki if you want to go out to OneNote. So in this particular example here, in a notebook that I have, I went out to a page and called the page Wiki Table of Contents. And I went ahead and put 5 different pages that I want to have in my wiki. So I'd go to my wiki table of contents, and I would like to have links to an introduction page, a preliminary action page, so on and so forth. So what I do is once I get those page names out there, and I advance to the next slide, what I can do is highlight them all and do link to pages. And what that does is it turns every last one of those into an actual link to the additional pages that it just created for you, which is really great. Now, you may be going, well, that's fine, but what if I wanted to like create my own page without having to go through that step? The wiki markup language, if you want to create a link in a wiki page, what you do is you use square brackets. So you put 2 square brackets together, not separated by spaces. You put the name of the page, and then you put 2 square brackets after it. Eliminate the space. If the page already exists, it creates that link pointing to that page. If the page doesn't exist, it creates it much like we did above, and you now have a link to go to that page. So this is a way that you could say, I'm going to go into the introduction page, and somewhere in the introduction page, I want to reference the completion steps. So I just go introduction page, this information, blah, blah, blah. To see more, look at square bracket, completion steps, square bracket, turns it into a link that takes you to that page automatically. This, though, keep in mind, if you're doing this kind of thing, this type of wiki linking doesn't work across notebooks. It's only going to work within a notebook. Also, if you delete a page and think, yeah, I don't need core research anymore, and then later on you go, oh, I think I do need core research. I'm going to create a new core research page. If you do that linking to create another core research page, it's probably going to go out and link to your OneNote recycle bin where the old one resides. So if you have things out there that you don't want to have anymore, you truly want to get rid of it, go to your history notebook recycle bin to clean out those deleted pages, and you'll then be able to use those again. For those who like using wikis, especially if you're using OneNote for a policy and procedures library, this is a really great way to set things up and make it have some sort of an organization instead of just a ton of pages that are all linked there that you kind of have to wade through and see what the pages are. I'm assuming there's still no questions out there, Don?
Actually, Eileen was asking a question about what's the link/menu item to do this again. She missed that part.
Oh, sure. Hold on. Yeah, so let me go back one. So if you are wanting to create it like this, I've got all my pages, you can just highlight it and do link to pages. That will actually create the link and create the actual page itself in the notebook. But if you want to manually create that link and create that page in the process, use these 2 square brackets that you see here. Again, don't put a space in between them, because if you do, it will automatically create the link like right away. Sometimes in this case, I just wanted to show it as a documentation thing. I kept trying to put 2 square brackets, the name of something, 2 square brackets. As soon as I hit that second n square bracket, it created the name and I lost what I was trying to do. So I had to put spaces in there just to show it. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, it looked like it did.
Great. Renaming the general channel. This is something that people had been asking about forever. You know, they get their team space. By default, you've got general channel, and people like, well, general really doesn't mean anything. I just want to get rid of it. I'm not going to use it. Like, nope, don't do that. You'll break everything. What you can do now, though, is instead of leaving it with a name of general, you can actually rename that channel. You've been able to rename other channels, just not general. Now they allow you to do that. So if you go out to your team space, right-click on the, or hover over it until the ellipsis shows up, click on the ellipsis, and then you can click on Rename Channel. And when you click on Rename Channel, it's going to tell you, pick your new name. Keep in mind that once you do this, you don't get to change it back to general anymore. And it does update it for all team members. So it's not like some people are seen as general, some people are seen as something else. It's going to change for everybody. In my case, for my example, it's like, you know, I think lobby is a better term for general. So I just changed mine to be lobby, and you see it changed to lobby in this particular list of channels that I had out there. It also goes in behind the scenes, and the folder that it creates associated with that channel also has the name changed. So if you go out and change general to lobby, you won't go out to the underlying SharePoint site and see a folder called general anymore. It will reflect the name change that you made. Removing the header section from a SharePoint page. This is something that I don't get a lot, but invariably you've got that one user who wants to do everything to the nth degree all by themselves. They don't want it to do it the way SharePoint does it. And it's like, I don't want the banner. I don't want the header. I just want a blank page. Well, this kind of gets you there without some of the weird stuff you had to go through to get before. So in this case, I've got a page out there, typical page, has the banner, got the title section at the top, and this is what I want to get rid of. So the first thing I do is click anywhere in here, and I can delete the web part because the banner is a web part. So once I click delete for the banner, then it's saying, hey, great, it's gone. You can add a new banner or a new, hero web part or whatever. But the thing is, I don't want that on there at all. So now what I do is I click somewhere into this full length section and do delete section. And once I do that, now I have a page that has virtually none of the trappings of a SharePoint page. You could turn off comments if you wanted to, or turn off you may be interested in. But this just gives them a blank page to work with, which makes some of my users who can be problematic very, very happy. Now you've got this blank page out there. You go, hey, this is great, click publish. But the only problem is that banner web part, the name that you put in there, was really what it used to name that page. And now you've just gotten rid of it. So what do you name the page? If you've done this, you're going to get this pop-up here that says, you're going to have to give me a page title since I can't pull it from the banner. Click close, go ahead and give it whatever name you want. In the particular example I'm using, I just called the page headerless page. And then once I published it, you'll see in the URL that we had here, site pages/headerlesspage.aspx. There is a link here to how to hide the SharePoint page title in a modern SharePoint page here. This is what I actually pulled this tip from, but this is really nice. Again, if you want to do something really that doesn't look like SharePoint, this gives you the closest you're going to get to what looks like a non-SharePoint page in SharePoint. And you can just start putting web parts all over it. There is a feature coming up. I don't know if you've talked about this in a prior meeting, Don, but they are talking about allowing you to put web parts in a section, and you can place the web parts anywhere in the section you want. So it's not going to be, they've got to be in a column, 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, whatever. You can just align them on the grid view and have them in whatever layout that you want. I'm really looking forward to seeing that, because if that's the case, then you could really get some cool things going on here with page layouts that you wouldn't see any other way. So if they call me back for another one of these sessions and that feature is there, you'll definitely see that as one of the tips we cover.
Yeah, Pete was just mentioning it's called flexible sections, and it
Yes.
said he just found that in his environment.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's already out there, so it's already starting.
I will go take a look for it then. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is one that I'm tossing out there just because we started seeing this as people were getting upgraded to new laptops in Windows 11. And I had a user go, hey, OneNote's broken. It's always on top of the screen. And when I launch anything else, everything's launched under OneNote. And I have to like minimize OneNote before I can see what was launched. And I'm like, you broke it. I don't know why you broke it. I thought, go take a look. What I found is there is a setting in OneNote. If you go out to View, always on top. And when you click this, it's going to go full screen on whatever monitor you're in. And if you're launching something on that monitor, it's going to launch behind OneNote, which is good if you always want to have OneNote up on your screen. Maybe you've got a second monitor and you always want to have OneNote on top because you're using it all day long. You'll love this feature. If it gets turned on by accident and you don't want it at all, you're going to hate it. So now you know how to turn it on or off, and it will make your life a lot easier if you're not in the state that you really want it to be in. Changes to file share versioning in SharePoint. This is something that came out recently, and that is, it used to be that when you were doing versioning, you basically just said, here's your version limit that you have, 500 major versions. That's the default. And you could have minor and major versions and the whole bit, but that was really about all you had. Well, then they came up with this version time limit setting.
Whoa.
Yeah, whoa. And what this now allows you to do is have different options. So no time limit, versions won't be deleted based on their age. That's pretty much what it starts out as, because that's the default way that you're looking at it. If you switch to manual and say, okay, I want to keep 500 versions, but I only want to keep those versions for 365 days. So if you only did like, if you did like 500 versions, but 365 days came up, it would start deleting versions based on only holding 365 days worth of stuff. This is something that can be very useful because it's going to save you space big time. They do have a thing called automatic, deleted over time based on activity and how long ago the file was first created. Doesn't give you a whole lot of input as to what that means in reality. I'm not sure I would ever select automatic. I'm a little gun shy as to what Microsoft may decide to do on that one. But I think the manual based on age is a really good option, especially if you have files that are like, 10, 12, 15, 20 gig, and they're being updated like once a day, twice a day, something like that. You may want to say, okay, I want to keep 500 versions. I don't know how many times it's going to be updated, but I really only need to keep these for like 90 days. So that 90 days is going to override the 500 that you have out there. So keep this in mind. If you're really tight on space in your SharePoint tenant, this can be a good way to help reduce the amount of space that you're taking up for versions that you really don't need to keep all that. So
hang on, Tom. We got a bunch of questions, a couple questions that came up with that. That's a trigger point, I think, with some people.
It sounded like it.
Yeah. So Eileen is asking, is it an either or scenario in this? And Eileen, why don't you come off mute and give a little more detail too? Maybe
that.
There you go.
If you set time limit, does count limit get deprecated, or how does that balance?
So let's say you set 365 and you had 500 sitting there, and you're updating this like 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
When 500 comes, up, it's going to, I believe, cut off, 501 is going to delete number 1, 502 is going to delete number 2.
Right.
I think this is more for if you've got 500 out there, but you only have to keep these for 90 days. The 90 days is where it's going to start chunking things off. So you may not ever be hitting 500, but you will be hitting that date, the number of days.
Okay. All right. Ryan is asking, and this is now talking about minor versions along with this. Does the 512 hard limit on minor versions still apply if this is being used? If you happen to know that, Tom.
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not gone out there and tried to break that. I'm assuming that it's going to still basically say the number of days. It's probably going to set and treat minor versions the same as major versions, but I have not tested that.
Okay, perfect. And then Christine, wondering if the manual for time limit version is available on a global level, not just at the local library level, list level.
If it is, it's probably something you're going to have to go set with PowerShell or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything that I've seen in document libraries, like if you want to say open in a client versus open in the browser, it's always based on the library that the setting is in. It doesn't basically allow you to do everything. Microsoft says, here's the default. That's what you're getting across the board. But there may be PowerShell scripts that allow you to set some underlying non-GUI based option to get that.
Yep. Christine actually has her hand raised, so you want to come up?
Sorry.
No,
I just
don't
had
worry.
another follow-up question. I think I may
Sure.
know the answer to it, but when you change the setting, is it starting from that point on? So anything previous, it doesn't apply to it? Because that was the case with the versioning. So if you were to change that to say 5 or 50, it only, takes place from the start of time when you set that setting, or if you update the file. And anything else, if you wanted something previous, you had to run a PowerShell script. So I'm wondering if that is the same case. I don't know
Not
if you know
really
that, but
sure. Yeah, not really sure, but I vaguely remember on the number of days, if I were to change this from 365 to say 180, I don't think, I vaguely remember something documentation-wise saying it doesn't go out and automatically wipe out 180 right away. It like goes out on the first day and gets rid of like 25 or 30 days, and then the next 30 days, and then the next 30 days. So it kind of eases it back to that shorter time period.
interesting. Yeah, because I'm wondering if, because if that's the case, then maybe we don't have to, after you can just say 30 days, and then you don't have to really run the PowerShell script or have someone open up a ticket for the SharePoint team to run the PowerShell script to take care of the previous versioning. Because, when you run that PowerShell script, you really see a file storage that frees up,
Right,
So.
right. So I
Okay,
think,
well, thank you.
I think
That's
it will
great. I
trim it.
didn't
Yeah,
even
it'll
realize
trim
that
it
one.
down. Yeah, but I just don't think it trims it all down at once.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
but it is in the documentation if you go out there and search for this feature.
Definitely. I'll take a look at it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Cool. One more. And
Okay.
it seems to be continuing, but
Apparently.
Rob had one, and I think I'll answer this one. I think so. How does file retention labels impact that? And realistically, Rob, the file retention labels impacts the document as a whole versus versioning does the versions within that document, right? So if you say you want that retention label to go for 50 days for some reason, that's at the document level, right? So that means that any versions you have on that will also disappear when that retention policy kicks in. So it's a little bit different than what we're talking about down here at the actual document level, as it's still there. You have all your versioning that's going on there. Yep, perfect. Rob
Great.
has it.
Thank you. Appreciate that, because I could not have answered that one. So channel cards in Microsoft Teams. This is just a cute little thing that if you haven't seen it, it's kind of nice. And that is if you are in a channel in Microsoft Teams and you go up to the title up here at the top, what you can do at that point is just by hovering over that, it pops up a card that tells you the name of the channel, which you already know. It tells you what the channel was about, which is good information. What I really like is it tells you when the last activity of the channel was. So it's like, hey, I'm going out to channel ABC. This looks like a really great description, and nobody's touched it in 2 years. Probably can ignore this one or even hide it so I don't even see it in my Teams client. But this is just something that recently came into being. And if you go ahead and hover over it, it's going to give you a nice synopsis of information for that particular channel. This is something that's kind of cool. This is something that, and I'm using this one in the Outlook client. Let's see, I think this one's for the Outlook client. Usually I do a lot of things on Outlook web because we don't have new Outlook yet in my environment. But this is if you have quick little messages that you send on a repeated basis and you're really tired of doing copy and paste or having to type them over and over and over again each day, what you can do is set up these My templates in your mail client. So if you're in a new item, like you're going to send a message, go to Message. I'm showing ellipsis here because I didn't have it done all the way out. But if you go into My Templates and View Templates, that's going to show you, hey, there's 3 templates out here that come prepackaged. I'll reply later, heading to a meeting. And you can just click that. It's going to fill in everything as you see over here on the left-hand side. And you don't have to type any of it. Just put the from and boom, you're done. But you can also click the plus template, which means I can now name a new template, give it the body of information, and then save it. And now when I go out there, I have this as an option I can select. And if I need to send this to somebody really quick, just boom, My Templates, select it, fills in the email, put a subject or whatever I need to put in there, and off you go. So this is really something that can save carpal tunnel syndrome. If you're doing a lot of the same things over and over again with the same type of email structure, you may want to check this one out. So this one is a little bit more complex in what you need to do, and it's been there for a long time. I just needed to do it the other day and I kind of forgot how to do it. So I kind of documented it and made it a tip. And so this is, if you have a list, in this case, I have a travel destination list, and I would like people to be able to give these locations a 1 through 5 rating. Which one do they like the best? Which one do they like the least? If you've got a SharePoint team site, keep in mind this does not work on a communications site list. Only on a SharePoint team site can you do this. Here's a list. I want to add ratings to it. And so I go out to the list settings and I'll see ratings settings here. And when I go and select that, I have the option to say, do I want to do ratings? Yes, I do. And do I want to also do likes and stars? Now, if you pick likes or if you pick stars, that's the one it's going to bring up, but it's going to add both of them. So you'll see here in my next example that I actually have both of them out there because I just picked one. You'll see that when I did that, I now have a ratings field, 0 through 5, number of ratings that we have out there, and the number of likes that we have. So that's just like a thumbs up type thing, as opposed to a 1 to 5 quantitative type rating. And now I just went out to my view, my all items view. Since I selected liked by, it included that in the all items view, the default view. But I went ahead and also included the number of ratings and the rating 0 through 5 as part of that view. And so now when I go out to the view, here's what I have: the number of likes, the number of ratings, and when I want to say, hey, Walt Disney Word, whoa, that should be world, say that I really like that one, I could just click the heart and it would show the heart then. And I could say, hey, I want to give that 5 because I'm a bit of a Disney-holic. And once you do that, it's going to say, hey, there were one rating here. It got a rating of 5. The Eiffel Tower, one person liked it, and a person gave it a 4 because, probably had to do with the Parisians they didn't like. But anyway, this is the kind of thing you can do if you have things out there and you want to get feedback from the people as to whether they like it or whether they don't. And the thing that I also like to do is when I use this is I like to go out and sort by the ratings column so that when you do that, the stuff that has the highest ratings appears up at the top of the list instead of you having to scroll up and down to see what's going on. And again, this is only available in SharePoint team sites. At this point, it is not available on communication sites. And this has been around there for a while, so. Now we're going to get into, say I've got 23 minutes. We can do this. Here's some things you can do in a SharePoint page that makes your page look kind of nice, makes it look different, makes it look very polished. And if you're like me who doesn't do that or think that way in a normal basis, this can be a real lifesaver and make it look really nice. So in this particular point, I'm going to use this pull quote icon to be able to take this paragraph here, because there's something in here that I kind of want to draw out to the reader so it just doesn't fade in with everything else. And yes, I did use a Lipsum or a Lipsum lorem ipsum type generator, only with cats. So this is why you have this particular writing on here. And so you have the intense pull format, which just puts a bar above and below, breaks this out into the middle. The boxed format is very similar. It just completes the two sides here. So you have that boxed. And then you can also go with the side border. Not my favorite because you kind of lose this side piece over here, but it does actually make it bold, puts it in the middle so it does get drawn out. And then the one that I kind of like is it does the quote icon that you see over here, the two quotes symbols there, which to me makes this look like a really high-end magazine that kind of does that when they're trying to pull something out in the magazine article that people can see and the people will pay attention. In this case, the cat would shed on it if it had the energy to do so. So this is something you may not do it a lot, and you don't want to do it on every other line that you have because then nothing really gets emphasized. But this is a good way to pull out a quote or to pull out a piece of information that kind of is the key thought you'd like them to take away from the page, take away from the writing that you have out there. If you are a person working with Outlook and you've got meeting attendees, you used to really have to struggle to get a list of what those attendees, who those attendees were. There just wasn't a really good way to do it. Well, now, if you go into, and this is Outlook on the web, if you go into the tracking feature at the very end and you click on the ellipsis, you're going to see 3 options to copy attendee name, copy all tracking information about the attendees, or to download it into a CSV file. If you go ahead and do all tracking information, it's going to show you the person, whether they're required or optional, and if they accepted or declined or just ignored you. Do keep in mind this does not include the organizer. Copy attendee names. This is basically the same as above, only without the required and the accepted information. And if you do download a CSV, you get it in a nice file that you can then work with. If you wanted to send out email notifications to people afterwards, this is a good way to get that information. But again, in all of these, keep in mind you're not getting the organizer information. If you want the organizer information, then go out to Classic Outlook. Because when you go out to Classic Outlook and do this, and you go into tracking, you've got the copy status to clipboard. So you don't have quite as many options. However, you do have the meeting organizer that shows up here. So this, you could basically copy and paste that, probably drop it into Excel, do a little reformatting, and then you could actually looking at this, it's giving you the names, it's not giving you the email address. Didn't notice that when I first did this one. So if you're after the email address, you're probably going to want to use the Outlook web-based version. If you're just looking for names, including meeting organizer, go with the classic Outlook client. And Outlook, new Outlook probably has more of the web-based version but I haven't started using that one yet, so I don't know that for sure. Microsoft Teams, new skin tone emojis and reactions. So if you're not yellow and you really want your color to be more representative of what your skin tone really looks like, you do have the ability on some of the emojis now to change the skin tone that's going to show up when you use those. So if you go into settings, appearance and accessibility, skin tones, you have 6 different skin shades that you can work with. I went ahead for this example and chose medium. If you're looking at hand gestures will pull the colors based on what you have. Same thing with the people. What it amounts to is when you're looking at all the emojis out there, if the emoji has a little dot in the upper right corner, that's going to pull the skin tone color that you have as your setting. Now, let's say, and see here, I chose the baby and it's got the medium colored skin tone. Now, let's say that you want to do a one-time change, so you don't want to go and set it and then have to go back and set it to something else. If you go out and choose, in this case, the baby, icon again, like I was doing, if you click on the dot in the upper right corner, it'll pop up all 6 variations in the skin tone, and you can select it on a one-time basis for this particular usage of it. So if you just want to do it every once in a while, use the dots. If you want to keep it the skin tone color for everyone that you want to use, go ahead and set it in your settings. And again, it's not all the emojis, it's just the ones that have the dots, which are usually the hands and the face ones. Updating your Microsoft 365 profile. Delve one away, good, bad, or otherwise. But that used to be where you'd put a lot of your information that was in your profile. Well, now, how do you do that? If you just go to the picture icon, upper right corner of your browser, you're looking at a SharePoint site or office.com, you're going to see this and you'll see the link, My Office 365 Profile. Click on that. It'll give you your profile information here, which is basically all the information that you would have normally had in Delve. Click on Update Your Profile to put that page in edit mode. And then you have the ability to update General, Contact, and About. Now, as you're looking through this, if the field is grayed out, such as my display name, that means that it's being pulled from a source within your environment, in this case, Active Directory. You can't change items that are grayed out. They are basically whatever the company says this is what you're going to use. In the contact information, work email, chat, and business number were grayed out because that's all supplied, in this case, by Active Directory. But I can set my home and mobile number to be whatever I want it to be. So I have the ability to do that, and then I can save changes. And then finally, if your people have been good about this, you can go into the About. So you can do a biography, put your skills down. Yes, I did do Lotus Notes at one point in my life. Or you can do Ask Me About if people like, hey, what can I talk to you about? What kind of things do you know about? This is the kind of stuff that you can store here. Some people have done it. Not a lot of people do it because I don't think a lot of people know it exists, or they just don't want to share that information. But this is what kind of replaces Delve in terms of you being able to share this information with others. See who else is looking at your list in Microsoft Lists. As you may know, Lists has been having a lot of changes, like your tabbed views across the top, and just a lot of changes in Lists that some of them have worked well, others have not, and they don't seem to be consistent from day to day. So I'm not really thrilled with a lot of the changes that have gone on with Lists. But one of the things I wanted to point out is that at the end of your bar of options here, forms, automate the whole bit right before manage access, you may see a little circle with somebody's initials in there. And this is telling you who else in your organization is in this list right now and looking at it, which that may not be important to you. But if you're working in this list and something's going on, you're like, hey, did somebody change something? Is there somebody else in this list? This should give you an indication of who you need to potentially talk to to see if they just changed something or what they're doing in the list or something along that line. Just something to keep in mind. If you see it there, that's what it's basically telling you. Using design ideas on SharePoint online pages. This is really good for me because when it comes to design, bottom line, I suck. I'm a plumber, not a painter, and I'm not really good at making beautiful pages, just functional ones. So using this design ideas icon that you'll see over here in the right rail, it can help you get some nice options that you may not have been able to or could come up with on your own. So in this particular case, I've got a page in edit mode and I click on design ideas. What that does then is it starts showing me design ideas based on what I've clicked on. So for instance, this one I clicked in the banner section. So I've done a basic banner, but maybe I wanted to see what else could I do that would look different. If I click on design ideas here, I could have the square in the middle. I could have the square over to the side. I could have a centered, overlay type thing. This is a nice way to be able to say, hey, I want something that looks different when they come into the page, but I don't know what different looks like. I don't even know what my options are. Check out design ideas. And if you have something in design ideas, you'll see that little red icon up in the upper right corner of the design idea icon. If that shows up, that means there's something for you to see. In this case, I went into just a regular text box and it gave me the option of like, hey, here's some different ways you could bold things or outline things or try a background color. Again, you may not take those as an option, but it's something that may give you an idea that you hadn't thought of before. And then finally, if you're using image web part, it can then go out and say, hey, have you thought about, instead of having image and text underneath it, because that's what I always think of, you may have text to the right. You may have your text wrapped to the left. You may have your text at the top with the text underneath. This again is giving you some options that you may not have thought of because you may not think in a design type mode. And do keep in mind, you only have this right now on banner, text, and image web parts. And the red dot will tell you whether or not you have that option. Number 17, we're coming down to the stretch. For your banners on top of the page, this was one that my friend Sandra, my coworker, happened to find. I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks really cool. You're not going to use it on every page that you have, but it's got a use case I think that's really important. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click Edit Properties for this banner. By default, I've got image title sitting there. And I'm going to choose the author banner. So what that does is it grabs my picture that's part of my profile, shoves it over to the right-hand side of the page, puts the title over here. It also gives me the chance to put a little text box above the title of my page, and it's kind of got a picture fadey type thing in the background. So you're thinking, well, why would I want to use this? This could be cool if you have a page or you have a CEO that puts out weekly pages of the latest news. Maybe the CEO wants to have this picture there on the right-hand side. Maybe you have pages that you put out for new employees in your site. So you go out, you put a new page out there for employee X. This is the person whose picture shows up. That's something that in those use cases, this makes a lot of sense. For all your other use cases, it probably doesn't pay to have a huge picture of yourself sitting over here on the right-hand side. But for those kind of things, I think this works really nice. And then there's the fade banner, which this is a really subtle thing. I don't think I would ever use it, but if you want to know that it's there. So in this particular case, I had a banner. This is a souk in Cairo for a trip that my then domestic partner, now my wife, went on to Egypt right before they shut down the world before COVID. So this was one of their markets at night, and we got this really cool picture, and I like this, and I have it out there. But I'm wondering, what's the fade banner look like? When you do the fade banner, it makes it higher, and it does a gradient type thing where it's darker on the left, goes to a little darker on the right, but it's very muted, and the colors fade out, and I think it loses a lot of its impact. And I don't like the fact it takes up that extra space before you get to really good stuff at the bottom. You may be a design person that says, no, this is really important, and here's why. Rock on, I feel good for you. Use it use it in good health, you know. But for me, this is something that I probably wouldn't use on a regular basis, but it is available to you. Next to last one, send meeting reminder emails from Outlook on the web. This could have been there for the last 5 years for all I know, because I didn't know that it existed at all. Again, my coworker Sandra's like, oh, look what I just found. And we do these little show and tell sessions when one of us finds something like this. So I'm out here, I'm looking at my calendar entry, the 5 minutes before I want to be notified. That's all normal stuff. We use that all the time. What I never noticed was at the bottom, edit email reminder. So what's that mean? What that means is instead of having it just pop up 5 minutes before the meeting, I can choose to remind all attendees a day before. There's custom settings here, which you'll see in a minute, to actually send them an email to say, hey, this meeting's coming up. Send it to my attendees, click save, much like you do for like your webinars, stuff like that, very similar. If you say one day before, it's got all the same time frames, 1 week before, whatever. You can also do custom to pick a specific time and date that you want this to go out. But again, I didn't know that you could use an email reminder as opposed to just having a notification pop up. And when they get this email reminder, it's kind of a cool looking email. You know, reminder, boom, make sure you're coming. Here's the date, time, Teams meeting, probably has a link to it if I had copied the rest of the pictures there. But this is a different way that can make it a little bit easier to remind people in a way that doesn't get lost in a notification that they don't pay attention to and they don't end up making the meeting or they're late for it. And the final one, and I will preface this one by saying this is how it's supposed to work. I still have people who are going, I've set this and it doesn't work and I don't know why. But I'm going to put it out here just because I think it's important. I'd like it if it actually did work on a regular basis. But what happened is when we moved to new teams, you used to be able to, in old teams, you used to be able to, or Teams Classic, say, hey, tell me when somebody goes from offline to available or available to offline. Now, when they got rid of the contacts in new teams that they had in Teams Classic, this functionality went away. Now it's back. And what you do is you go into your chat area, click on the ellipsis next to the person's name, and you say notify when available. And at that point, when they become available, you then see a little pop-up. If you want to turn that off, you can do turn off notifications. And so you quit seeing those notifications. If you don't have them pinned, it's like, well, I don't have them in chat. I need to go ahead and set them though. If you go into team settings for notifications and activity people, you can manage notifications and you can pick the people that you want to have this happen to. Now, I think what makes this work or doesn't work is it says this allows you to tell when people go from offline to available or available to offline. I don't know that it actually says available to busy, to in a meeting, to not in a meeting. I think it is just for those settings. And I think that's why some people see it. Some people don't, and it doesn't react the way some people expect it to or the way that it used to. But if you need to cyberstalk somebody on Teams, this is an option that you can do that you lost in new Teams from Teams Classic. And with that, that's the 20 tips. I actually finished it 5 minutes early. Yay!
Well, we'll see. So Eileen has a question. She raised her hand, so I don't know if you still have that, Eileen.
Yeah, it was the same.
Oops.
Do we hear you? There you go.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, Eileen.
Oh, sorry. Is it an either or, whether it's email versus a pop-up, or can you have both?
I don't know that you can have both because you have to pick one of those options on the way down. I don't think you can pick one and then go and do it another one.
Okay.
So it's an either or. In my case, I would probably mostly always go with the pop-up so that people are notified, but it does give you one additional option if that works better for your meeting culture.
Multiple reminders on large group events and might just save him a little work.
Yeah. I know that if you're using, I think if you're using webinars, you do have a lot of options there for being able to customize your messages and stuff like that. But this is just something you have available for anything that you're working with.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Raise your hand, throw it in the chat.
Again, thanks everybody for giving me an hour of your time. I really do appreciate it. I know you're all busy, and I hope you got one or two or more features out of this that you can go back and use for yourself. And I'm sure you'll see me again in this venue when Don goes, "Oh my God, we need a speaker. Tom, you available?"
And you tend to come to a lot of our sessions anyway.
And I tend to come to a lot of the sessions anyway. I'm already here. Why not?
Yeah, might as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Tom.